Shut up and sit down.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Master the NEC, where we talk about the National Electrical Code and, of course, all things electrically related. My name is Paul Abernathy, your host, as always, and I want to thank you for joining me on today's podcast. Hopefully you're checking us out over on our YouTube channel. That is youtube.com/Master the NEC, sharing it with everybody, sharing on all those forums, letting people know about it, all that free education. We also put our podcasts and our videos up there, but if you want to listen to our podcasts, you can do that from our website at masterthenec.com. There's a little link on there for the podcast. It has a player on there that can play every episode for you. But you can also listen from your phone using apps like Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, Apple. All you've got to do is do a search for Master the NEC, and you will get our channel, and then you can stream all of our episodes, and we've got literally hundreds of episodes on all different types of topics dealing with the National Electrical Code, leadership, ownership, management. All these type of things are available. All you got to do is search through it. It gets a bit cumbersome. There's a lot of information there. There's literally, you could listen to a new episode for an entire year and never listen to the same one. But there are a lot of them there. You just got to dig down deep, and don't dig down a couple pages. If you really want to look, start scrolling down deep. There's some really nice episodes and some gems in there. You just got to hunt for them. Now, today's episode is sponsored by Electrician Pride. That is the location for all of our shirts, our logos, our stickers, our mugs, all those type of goodies that help support the show. So I'm going to run the commercial, and then we're going to get into today's episode. Today's show is sponsored by electricianpride.com, your one-stop shop for electrician-specific t-shirts, hoodies, phone cases, mugs, die-cut stickers, leggings, and so much more. Featuring unique designs for electricians, journeymen, and master electricians, as well as electrical engineers and electrical inspectors. For more information on all the products that are available, visit us at www.electricianpride.com today. All right. So again, we appreciate everybody that goes over there. We have some really unique designs that we've come out with lately. We've got a Code Warrior. I think we got Supertrition. I like that one, Supertrition. And because you electricians are amazing. And then we have one called Code Strong. That's for all my folks that are so dedicated to learning the code. That's just my way of saying Code Strong, baby. You're putting your time in. You're learning this code. You're getting better one day at a time. You're reducing job site issues because you're learning the National Electrical Code. You should be very proud of yourself. All right. So today's episode, we're going to be in Article 210. We're going to be talking branch circuits, but we're going to be talking about receptacles. More specifically, we're going to talk about receptacles that go in outlets. So an outlet is not a receptacle. A receptacle is a device that gets mounted in an outlet. It could be in an outlet box, but again, an outlet could also be a location that you put a luminaire to, and that would be a lighting outlet. Okay, so we're not talking, when you hear the term outlet, we're not talking about the device. That's a location. That's a point on the electrical system where we can get access to the power from an outlet, right? We can connect utilization equipment up to that outlet, right? That'd be a direct wire. So thinking about the concepts, today's episode, I really wanted to dig into receptacles and the ratings of receptacles that mount in those outlets. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about today. It's going to be the basis of our episode today. So we really kind of cover all of those things. Okay, so let's go on and get started in that. And I'll tell you, we're in the 2020 edition of the National Electrical Code. And we're going to be starting this journey in 210.21b. All right, 210.21b is titled Receptacles. Now, the heading of 210.21 is called Outlet Devices. Okay, so when we think about receptacles, that's exactly what they are. If you go look at the definitions in Article 100, you look under receptacles, they are devices. Okay, so when we do that, again, if you're not familiar with doing that, you have Article 100. Again, I'm always a stickler for definitions, and I tell people all the time, go look at the definition of what a receptacle is, and you'll see a rather long definition of what a receptacle is. Okay, so again, I can't explain to you any more importantly how definitions play a key role in being able to maneuver and understand the National Electrical Code. You gotta know definitions. And so don't shortcut yourself. Spend the time really reading those definitions, create flashcards or whatever you need to do. Understand the definitions, okay? And also go listen to our episode on ampacity. That way I describe to you exactly what ampacity is, okay? Neat thing. So today we're talking receptacles. Now, 210.21b1 is dealing with single receptacles. That's just one receptacle on one contact yoke or strap, okay? Yoke being the metal strap that supports the device, okay? Now, this is, many people also call it a simplex or a simplex or wherever you're at in the country. It's just one receptacle as opposed to two receptacles on one strap or yoke. That would be a duplex, okay? 4 of them would be a quadplex. You with me? So we're talking a single receptacle now. A lot of times this is used in areas where you have what's called an individual branch circuit. Now, we used to call this stuff dedicated branch circuit, but reality, it's an individual branch circuit to a single receptacle, okay? Now, we can still have dedicated branch circuits that run to other circuits that are dedicated for specific use, but we're talking 210.21b1 today. And that is single receptacles on an individual branch circuit. That's all that's on it, is a single receptacle. And here's what the code says. So if you don't have your code book, that's okay. I'm going to read it to you, and then I'll explain it. It says, B1 says single receptacles, or receptacle, no plural, single receptacle on an individual branch circuit. It says a single receptacle installed on an individual branch circuit shall have an ampacity rating not less than that of the branch circuit. What are we saying? Well, if I run an individual branch circuit and it's 15 amps, and I'm going to run it to a location and I'm putting a single receptacle in this outlet box, then that receptacle has to be rated not less than the rating of that branch circuit, which is 15 amps. And the rating is defined by the overcurrent device. So it's a 15 amp rated circuit, and it has to be a 15 amp rated single receptacle. Pretty simple. 20 amp would apply the same way, okay? This is for a single, all right? So that's the rule for a single receptacle. It's pretty straightforward. Again, you have an informational note, remind you to go back and read what the definition of what receptacle is. That is very helpful, very helpful. And we do have some exceptions for receptacles that deal with motors in 430, and we have one as well for welders. Obviously not going to get into the weeds on that in this episode because when you start dealing with the exceptions, it really helps to have images and graphics and all, and we're not going to do that obviously in a podcast, right? So we want to keep it to a really high level so that you can get something out of this episode in the short amount of time that we're presenting the podcast. Okay, so the next one we're going to look at is dealing with cord and plug connected loads. Now, we have a lot of applications where we have 2 or more receptacles, and that would be a duplex. A duplex would be 2, okay? But it could be a quad, be 4. But in a situation where you have a branch circuit that's supplying 2 or more receptacles, in a situation, and we're going to keep it at receptacles because it also says 2 or more outlets, so it could supply 2 separate outlets with receptacles in those outlets, by the way. Okay, and when you have a cord and plug connected load, let's say it's a disposal and you choose under 422, you choose the option to cord and plug connect it rather than direct wire it, or you have a dishwasher, something like that that's got a defined value for load on the nameplates, and you do all this and you're cord and plug connecting it into a receptacle. Well, you got to be careful because you have what's called a maximum load in amperes based on the circuit and based on the receptacle rating that you can exceed. And so that's what we're going to look at here in those examples. So here's what B2 states. It says total cord and plug connected load. It says we're connected to a branch circuit supplying 2 or more receptacles. And I should say something. In the 2023 code, there's a lot of areas in here where we say where connected. It's going to be changed to say if connected. Okay, we're going to leave where for things that are actually spatially oriented, means it's actually a where. But when it's a where, we're going to change, when it's telling you something like where to connection, we're going to change that to if. So it's going to say if connected to a branch circuit. Okay, I just thought I'd throw that out there. We just finished Code Panel 5 hearings, and a shout out to Scott Harding. He did a great job as the chair, first time ever. His COVID world, we're trying to do all that online. It was a long week. I ain't gonna lie to you, but we got it done, and hopefully we got some good changes. I got some things that I wanted to get changed in there. I used a kind of a roundabout way to do it, and I'll talk about that in another episode, which is, I knew what I was doing, and I was successful, but it is going to make the code better and easier to read and understand. So again, I'll talk about that in another episode. It's just when you know how that works, you know how to get something done. And when you have so many experts in a room, you almost have to put something in a certain way so that it can be, you almost have to dumb it down because everybody wants to overanalyze it. Anyway, for another episode, but everybody that was on that code panel did an amazing job. It was a great week. Anyway, I'm sorry. You know what? I have ADD terrible. I get off of everything. Okay. So let's talk about B2 again. So when we're talking about a cord plug connected load, there's a maximum load that we can't exceed based on the rating of that receptacle and based on the circuit ampere rating. Okay. So here's what it says. I'll read it again because I think I broke it away and I want to make sure we follow it in context. It says, where connected to the branch circuit supplying two or more receptacles or outlets, a receptacle shall not supply a total cord and plug connected load in excess of the maximum specified in table 210.21b2. Now notice it says a receptacle shall not supply a total cord and plug connected load. Any one of the receptacle shall not do this. So that takes us down to table 210.21b2. Now check this table out. It's at the very bottom of the page. And if you're following along, we're in the 2020 edition. And it's at the very bottom of page 66, again, of the printed edition. And it says maximum cord and plug connected load to a receptacle. So for a 15 or a 20 amp branch circuit, I can have a receptacle that's rated 15 amperes. And you're going to see in a minute why that's okay. Okay, so before anybody turns around and goes, oh my God, what did he just say? It's okay. Just bear with me. So if the circuit is rated 15 or 20 amperes and I put a 15 amp rated receptacle on it, the maximum load in amperes that you must not exceed is 12 amperes. Now, this is really only going to work for cord and plug connected loads that I know about. This is not something that you're going to apply to all the receptacles in your house under general use because you don't know what's going to be connected into them. And I don't think that anybody coming along plugging something into it that might exceed this maximum load is going to have any clue what they're plugging into it. Okay? This is more for applications where you know the cord and plug connected load. For electricians, when you take an appliance or something and you put a cord and plug connection onto it, that you have to be familiar with this understanding about the maximum load that can be served. Okay, that's kind of what we're talking about. Make it clear? All right, so it says a 15 or 20 amp rated circuit, 15 amp receptacle, maximum load is 12 amps. If it's a 20 amp rated circuit, then the receptacle is rated 20, then the maximum load is 16 amperes. If it's a 30 amp rated circuit and the receptacle rating is 30 amperes, then you can't exceed 24 amps as a maximum load. Okay? Makes sense. Pretty straightforward. I don't see any exceptions to B2. So again, there it is, black and white. And again, these are going to be for known cord and plug connected loads that you have to take into consideration. Do not try to apply this to your general use receptacles because you have no clue what's going to be plugged in there. I'm serious. Okay. So let's just keep it real, folks. All right. Okay. So there we go. So the next thing we want to look at is B3. This is receptacle ratings. Okay. So that's what we're going to look at next. It says where connected, and again, it's going to be if connected in the 2023 cycle. It says where connected to a branch circuit supplying 2 or more receptacles or outlets, and again, a duplex is 2. Receptacle ratings shall conform to the values. Again, we're talking receptacle ratings here. The receptacle ratings shall conform to the values listed in Table 210.21b3, or where the rating is higher than 50 amperes, because that table only goes up to 50. The rating of the receptacles shall not be less than the branch circuit rating. Okay, so if it's an 80 amp branch circuit and you have a receptacle, then the receptacle would have to be 80 amp rated receptacle. You with me? That's what it means. So let's jump to the right side of the page and look at that other table, Table 210.21b3 for a second. Now, in my Fast Tracks program, I have a couple questions that try to, it's not a trick question, but it kind of plays on people's misunderstanding of these applications. And they routinely get them wrong because they don't realize that on a 20 amp branch circuit, you could put a 15 amp rated receptacle. But on a 15 amp rated branch circuit, you can't exceed 15 amperes. So just remember, on a 15, you're not to exceed 15. Okay? And if you look at the table, you'll see that right there in black and white. If it's a 20 amp rated circuit, let's say it's going to the kitchen countertop and it's rated 20 amps, then that receptacle that's on that countertop could be a 15 or a 20 amp. Now, what's significant about that? Okay? Because a lot of times in the kitchen, you're going to see 15 amp rated GFCIs. You're going to see 20 amp rated GFCIs. They charge more for the 20 than the 15, so the frugal electrician is going to use a 15 because he can. Even though it's a 20 amp circuit, he still can use a 15 amp rated device. Unless, of course, the manufacturer instructions tell you can't. Okay, 110.3b. So, and I know everybody reads those instructions that come with the GFCI, right? Probably not. All right. So as you can move down the list here, so if you have a 20 amp, then it can be a 15 or 20. If it's a 30 amp, it's got to be 30. If it's a 40 amp rated circuit, then it can be 40 or 50. That's where people get it wrong. It can be a 40 or 50. And then, of course, if it's a 50 amp rated circuit, then the receptacle's rating has to be at least 50 amperes. Okay? And any over 50, it's got to be the rating of the receptacle shall not be less than whatever that branch circuit rating is, and that's going to be dictated by the overcurrent protected device. Okay? All right, so that kind of covers those aspects of receptacle ratings. All right, we're going to end this on B4. Now, this is range receptacle ratings. Now, we just finished seeing what it would be for receptacle ratings for various size circuits. So typically, this is really not going to come that much into play, but this is a permissive rule here that says range receptacle ratings. It says the ampere rating of a range receptacle, shall be permitted to be based on a single range demand load as specified in Table 220.55. For example, you could go over if it was let's say a 10 kW range. It's not over 12. You go to column C, you go down, and one range would be 8,000. So you utilize that 8,000, right? So it'd be 8,000 divided by 240, and that is 33.3. Okay, well, you're not going to have one rated 33.3, so typically this is what allow you to be, it'd be, let's say, a 40 amp rated device. Okay, because it's over 30, so 40. So in a 40 amp rated device, perfectly acceptable. And then, of course, got to remember your branch circuiting requirements. If it's 8 3/4 or greater, then you also have to remember the rules in 210.19a3, which the last sentence actually just says. Now, again, they're talking about conductors now. You already did the receptacle. We're talking conductors. As this one says, for ranges of 8 3/4 kW or more rating, the minimum branch circuit rating shall be 40 amperes. Of course, you always have to calculate based on whatever the load is going to be, and you have to do that accordingly, but you have some minimum basis rules. So we have, if it's 8 3/4 or greater, the minimum branch circuit sizing is based on 40 amps. And you get this rule for receptacle ratings in 210.21b4 that says it shall be permitted to rate the receptacle for a range based on the same demand factors that you would use in table 220.55 for your range calculations anyway, right? So it allows you to do that. And I gave you an example of how I did that using one, again, I guess 10 or 11, it doesn't matter, kW range. Using that table, you can use 8,000 because it's one range. And then that divided by 240 is going to give you the amperage rating. And then again, you're going to have to pick a device at that point that is rated for 33.3, and 30 would not be. So it would be a 40 amp as a minimum. Of course, also, again, following all those rules, you would size the brand circuits in accordance, again, 210.1983. And you're going to protect all that with the overcurrent device under 210.20. Again, way too much information for this episode. So anyway, that's kind of talking about receptacles that go in device, receptacles that go into outlet boxes, things like that. Hopefully you learned something in this episode that, yes, summarizing, if I have a cord and plug connected load, say a disposal, and it's on a 15 amp circuit, I just have to make sure that that's a 15 amp receptacle it's plugging into. I just have to make sure that the disposal doesn't have a maximum load of more than 12 amps. Okay. If I've got a 20 amp brand circuit supplying my kitchen countertop receptacles, again, we're not even talking about GFCI protection or AFCI protection. We're just talking about the receptacle ratings. That if it's a 20 amp rated circuit, I can use a 15 or a 20 amp rated receptacle on that circuit. Okay, it's okay because 210.21b3 tells me it's okay. All right, so that's kind of summary and how you do all that. In another episode, we'll get into what's called permissible loads under 210.23. And again, we'll talk about all those nuances with 15 and 20 amp, a cord and plug with not fastened in place, and utilization equipment fastened in place, and 30 and 40 and 50 amp circuits. We'll get into all that in another time. But hopefully you got something out of today's episode. Again, talking with receptacle ratings, whether it's a single receptacle or a duplex receptacle, and how associated cord and plug connected loads are applied. And all of that was covered. And we even talked about the tables. It shouldn't be confusing anymore. Until next time, folks, stay safe. God bless. And we'll catch you on another episode of Master the NEC.
Shut up and sit down.